Welcome. My name's Andy Chapman. I'm the chair for this session. I'm a director of the Economy for the Common Good in the UK. We're one of the partner organisations for the Festival of Change. And I've got Henry and Nicolette with me. If you'd like to just introduce yourselves both briefly.
Hi, Kazar. Lovely to meet you sort of virtually face-to-face. I am the founder and CEO of Promoting Economic Pluralism, which is the organisation that is behind the Festival for Change.
Thanks, Henry. And Nicolette?
Yes, I'm Nicolette. I'm a trustee of Promoting Economic Pluralism, so working with Henry on this. Really excited to meet you. It's a fascinating project and want to know a lot more about it.
Yeah. So first of all, congratulations to you and your colleagues on the project for getting to this stage, because as you probably know, there's a lot of great ideas submitted so far as part of the Festival for Change, and so it's a real achievement to have got to this stage. So very well done. What we want to do today, we've got about half an hour. We'd like you just to take 5 minutes or so to tell us about the project in a little more depth, and then we have some questions that we'd like to ask you, which will help us to understand it in better detail. And then after today, there will be, we'll be having further discussions, and you should hear by the end of the week about the next stage and whether your project's been successful in getting into the final. So, okay. So would you like to, tell us about Project Pusaka?
I'd like to say, I don't know, I'm guessing it's morning where you are right now?
It is. Well, it's midday actually, just after midday.
Okay, well, I'll just say good morning, Mr. Henry, Mr. Andy, and Ms. Nicolette. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present my idea of Project Pusaka. Climate change is the most serious challenge that humanity has ever faced. As we are aware of its impacts and political adversaries affecting the Filipino people, the conversation on how these are affecting indigenous communities is very much lacking. I don't know what they're fighting for anymore. All I know is that they were recruited with the promise of enough money to support their family. When I heard these words from indigenous women, a tear fell in my eye. I felt her loss as her friend got shot. I felt her pain, and I felt the loss of a hope of a better future. In 2017 alone, 51 indigenous people fighting for their land rights were killed, and these numbers add up each year. The climate crisis, social injustice, and COVID-19 has affected more than 30 families in a Subanan community in Barangay Titay, Zamboanga, Sibugay. And this goes the same for the rest of the 15 to 60% of indigenous population in the region. This has forced them to take up arms instead of skilled tools. However, to address these challenges, I founded Project Pusaka to empower and build climate-resilient communities through permaculture. We do this through three main goals: provide permaculture education training, create a permaculture community-wide garden, and develop a permaculture-based business enterprise. With years of diverse experience in local sustainable development, the team and I are proposing a combination of education, skill set, and self-supporting systems that will create a circular and zero-waste local economy. By supporting us, you will be able to help hundreds of indigenous and vulnerable families in the Philippines. You will be able to help us young people shape new economic landscapes, and help us make purposeful careers through this project. Join me as we create sustainable local economies and green jobs. Join me as we take on a journey in restoring hope among the hopeless. Join me as we create climate resilient pusakas that will be passed on from this generation to the next. We look forward to your support in making this idea into a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Keziah. That was great. As I say, we've got a couple of questions each that we'd like to just ask you. Perhaps I could start by saying, I mean, this sounds like a really sort of inspiring and wonderfully motivated project. I suppose my first question is just about the environment in which you are going to be trying to get it off the ground and get it established, because if there are sort of paramilitary groups around and guns around the community, that sounds like quite a dangerous kind of environment in which to be operating. What's your perspective on that, and how do you think it would be possible to overcome that kind of culture?
That is actually one of the main problems in this project as well, because the issue regarding the terrorist groups has been there for many years. Ever since my parents were born, there have been massacres, there have been bombings. To address this, usually the terrorist groups do not target the vulnerable communities, but the big businesses and politicians, in which they kidnap their kids and ask ransom. In regarding to this Project Pusaka, I'm very confident that they will not touch us or like bother us in a way, because as much as they do these kind of like activities such as ransom and kidnapping, they also respect their own, because they also live in the rural areas. So some of these people live together. So what I'm thinking is that if we empower them, we empower the indigenous groups who are also empowering these terrorist groups. Like we're also like not supporting them, but we are like sort of like changing their minds and letting them know that there are better options out there, rather than just being recruited in terrorist groups in exchange for the basic needs, and that there is actually hope for living a better life, and also creating that better path for a better future for their children.
Okay, thank you. Nicolette, would you like to ask Keziah a question?
Yes, I was, no, it's a wonderful, fascinating project, but I wanted to find out a little bit more about how you go about bringing in the Sabanian, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, perspective to solve problems. And especially when you're using ideas which maybe have had their origin in the West, how do you make sure that that originality which comes from the Sabanians is not sort of trumped or swamped?
So I've been connected with the Sabanan for the past year now. I've been talking to them what their main challenge is. I've been listening to them, asking them questions, and using the human-centered design, which I learned from the Global Changemakers mentorship program. And while conversing with them, knowing their challenges, most of them, like the majority of them, told me that their main struggles is in the core of their agricultural source of living, affected by climate change. Because as we know, indigenous people have this connection to nature, and the top two source of living they have is agriculture or fishing. However, the Subanons live in the mountainous areas, in the rural areas, isolated from community, in which they farm, they grow crops and raise domestic animals. The question about incorporating permaculture principles to their everyday lifestyle is very much easy, because like when my team looked at this, our main problem was, how can we translate like the language barrier, because of course a lot of permaculture sources are in English. However, the indigenous tribes speak Tagalog. However, we did some research and saw that there is the Philippine Permaculture Association, which is actually one of our partners. They partner with big universities in the Philippines. They create permaculture curriculums, in which they also like teach. Like right now they're in virtual because of COVID, and they tailored it in a sense that it is more suitable in the Philippines in regards to how can it be implemented in this type of region, because of course it originated in the Western world, where there's 4 seasons. In the Philippines there's only 2, it's rainy or sunny. So they basically tailor this to be more suitable for the Filipino people. And their curriculum is also in the language that the Subanon people can understand. So yeah, that's how I would address your question.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Henry, what would you like to ask?
Yes, well, I was just wanting to build on that, because I'm quite familiar with the permaculture. Actually, I did a course in Australia back in the 90s, and I love it. As I love actually one of their rules is you should always have 7 reasons for doing anything. I think it's brilliant, because actually it's a way of doing systems thinking, and I think it should be. It's a good rule that can be applied in a lot of different situations. But one of the things I recall about it was that some of the original learning about permaculture systems actually came from Asia and Chinese systems of farming. So I mean, it's some time since I studied this, but as I recall, there were some well-established traditional Chinese growing systems combining fish farming, animals growing vegetables and so forth in a sort of systemic way. And actually some of those ideas had been effectively taken by the Australians and built into the origins of permaculture. So I was wondering actually whether there are any traditional forms of systemic agriculture within the Philippines that could be built on as well, so that permaculture is not seen as a sort of alien implant, but is actually building on thinking that is already present.
Concerning that question, as I mentioned earlier, that the indigenous people rely mainly on agriculture, so that pretty much most of their lives and also their ancestors, they've been doing agriculture for many decades. And the thing about indigenous people is that they have this connection with nature, which is also one of the basic philosophies of permaculture, is studying the area, knowing the climate, knowing the soil type, and knowing what type of crops to plant where, and like also how to build an efficient irrigation system. So I would say that they do have some of the basic permaculture philosophies incorporated in their culture that has been passed on from generation to generation. However, this incorporation of actual permaculture to their traditional agriculture will be sort of like an innovation to it, in which they will be taught, because for them, they plant the crops that they know, like they've been planting, like the taro, the like, and other root crops that has been there from, from their ancestry. So this introduction of permaculture will introduce them to new types of crops that can be planted, a new design of farming, and also the new innovative technologies of smart agriculture as well. Most especially permaculture's highlight of making a very effective irrigation system, because irrigation system is one of the things that they struggle with concerning that the climate crisis. There has been high temperatures, and it has been causing drought in their area, and a lot of them plant rice, so they can't grow anything. So through permaculture, they will be able to just innovate on their traditional agricultural farming that they've been doing from the past decades and years from their ancestors. Yes.
And that's fascinating. So have you piloted this at all? Have you tried with a particular community to see how this works, or whether the ideas are sort of acceptable culturally and so on?
Speaking to as I've spoken to the Sabanan people, what I've noticed about them is that their values, even though they are secluded from the community due to social discrimination, they are very much open to new ideas. Actually, when I talked to one of the families in just, I think last month, yeah, it was last month, and I was talking to them about if they know if there's a space that we can actually make the community-wide garden. And one of them, and because like they were very much excited and enlightened with this idea, because it gives them hope, because right now their resort is joining the terrorist groups, and none of them wants that. Like they're basically forced to do that. So one of this women, which has a 2-acre land, oh no, actually 5 acres of land, said that she would willingly donate her land so that we can use it as a community-wide garden as a start. And then before we move to the other communities and execute this project.
Could you use that as a pilot, so that you use it as a demonstration that other people can come and see?
Yeah.
That would be great. I do worry, by the way, as you're saying, that the people who are running the operation for kidnapping and so on, if they see people no longer, if they're no longer able to recruit people to their operations because of your activities, then they may not be very happy with you.
To address that one, the main source of actual like the focus team, or I would say the main recruiting terrorist group, is like 12 hours drive away from where they currently are. So basically the people here is like the in this Subanan community, it's actually just like a subgroup of that group, which are forced to join them because they have no other source of providing the basic needs for their family. Although there will be expected like like challenges like these in the future, we are hoping, because like right now we have the support of the governor in the region, and also a lot of the businesses, and also NGOs like the Institute of Economics and Peace, which I'm an ambassador in. If whichever and if ever these occasions arise, we are hoping and we are going to we're like create negotiations with them in regards to helping them as well, not like helping them like build their terrorist community, but in a way that if you stop doing this, and if you stop recruiting indigenous people, we will also execute what we are currently doing right now and help you build your own permaculture community-wide garden. Because like the basic problem in the growing terrorist community is actually the lack of food, and actually food insecurity.
Okay. And has the Philippine Permaculture Association put in a permaculture systems and demonstrated the increased stability and resilience of food growing in Philippines as a result?
Yes, they have done that in various regions, most especially in the capital region in Manila. However, not much that I know of in the Mindanao region, where pretty much this area is very much secluded because, of course, because of the terrorist activities that has been going on. And also, in addition to your question in regards to whether the terrorist activities will affect the project, recently the Philippine president issued a terrorist bill which will increase military protection in these areas, most especially where terrorist activities are very high, in which they will assign military personnel and execute martial law in those areas.
Which could increase the level of violence and make it more difficult. Where are you from, out of interest, in the Philippines?
I'm actually from Dumaguete City, which is near Cebu. That was where I was born. However, my mom is from Zamboanga, Sibugay. Because like this terrorist activities I've experienced it since I was young, because like I come from a family of politicians. So every time we'd go visit my grandparents, we would literally hide in a room. Even up till now, we don't go outside. We just hide in the room because of like kidnapping, terrors, and everything. But recently, things have been going very well because of like the martial law that has been executed by the president. People can go outdoors. They can freely go, like they can go to like waterfalls and actually enjoy activities with their classmates, their friends, their families without fear of being kidnapped. Yeah, so basically I'm very hopeful for this project to be executed because like I said, the Philippine government are also doing their role in making sure that these like terrorist activities are actually controlled, or that people are safe, and that it's actually going to be addressed. Yeah, it's actually been better since the past 5 years.
But the president is very controversial, isn't he, in his tactics?
Yes, he is. There has been, for me, I do have my own opinions about him, but I see his true, and like I see his vision for the region of Mindanao itself. Because like if you go to the Philippines, I don't know if you guys have been to the Philippines, but there are like 3 main regions: Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. Luzon and Visayas are pretty much very safe. It's where the tourists go. But when you go to the Mindanao region, it's like a different country. It's like everyone's scared. There's lack of innovation, there's lack of access to education, there's a lot of poverty. But if you go to these areas, they're also rich in agriculture. But the main problem is the climate crisis is affecting this main source of agriculture. And this is where permaculture goes in, to improve and create new systems of agriculture that will actually provide them a pretty much secure food source as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Keziah. That's great. Nicolette, do you have any final questions for Keziah?
I found it absolutely fascinating. I just wanted one thing we haven't touched on at all, I noticed, is that in your proposal, you talk about enabling the Sabanas to set up their own business enterprises where they can, building on their own culture and their own sort of patterns and artwork. Is that sort of very tangential to the main proposal, or can you just say a little bit more about that?
In regards to the culture, the business enterprise, it is something that we touched up because like we did that because of like actually the Festival for Change, because when we put up our proposal and our summary, we saw that our project has the capabilities of also improving the local economy and also providing the Subanan people with like an additional source of income, also providing jobs as well. So we were like, why not actually create a very small permaculture-based business in which they can generate income? Because right now, like in the Philippines, the hip type of thing or the in thing are these native themed restaurants in which people can just relax and very much enjoy the view of nature. And where the Subanans live, they pretty much have that rich environment of nature that people just relax. In fact, a lot of people go hiking in their community right now, but they're still pretty much secluded due to the discrimination. So for that one, we are thinking of having like of utilizing the food or like the products grown in the garden. We will be creating a flea market, or as we call tabo in our language, or that native themed restaurant, which is like the in thing right now, which is the one of the like that's where people go to right now. And for this one, we will be creating the restaurant. We'll be partnering with the biggest catering services in the region, which is Al Ronnie's, in which he will be helping us create and market this small restaurant. And also the theme will of course highlight the patterns of the Subanans. And also we will put up stuff in regards to their tradition so that it will be make known as well, because their culture is a rich Philippine culture.
That's necessary. I think it's great that you're getting in all those extra benefits around the edges of the main project. And it also takes me back to where I start. My first question was saying you don't want to have the Western ideas trumping the indigenous culture. And I think this is one of the ways you can sort of start sowing the seeds for growing up the indigenous culture in a much more economically sustainable way.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much, Keziah. We're pretty much at the end of our time. It's been great to meet you and to hear about Project Pusaka. As I said at the beginning, we'll be back in touch by the end of the week to let you know how things have gone and whether you've made it to the final. And thank you again for coming and talking to us about it, and best of luck.
Thank you so much, Henry, Andy, and Nicolette. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.